Have you ever wondered how Darth Maul escaped Palpatine's capture in Season 5 of the Clone Wars? Or what happened to Mother Talzin, considering she was such a major character in Clone Wars and just disappeared? Well, stay tuned for these answers and more as we delve into the Clone Wars Legacy Project, and in this part we're tackling the Son of Dathomir comic, which is the only comic both in canon and Legends continuity. So stay tuned for that and more on Star Wars Chit-Chat. And we are here for another episode of Clone Wars Conversations, where I am joined with Dave and Maff, and we go through every episode of the Clone Wars 2008 animated series, and we basically talk about everything. However, Maff has not seen all of the Clone Wars, so as we have finished Series 6, he has not seen Season 7 of the Clone Wars, so we'll not be spoiling that. We have, however, seen Star Wars Rebels and all the live-action stuff, and we haven't watched Bad Batch yet, or I have, these two haven't. So we're going to be talking about Clone Wars-y stuff, but if we're not talking about certain connections, and you're questioning why I'm not, it's because I'm hiding it from Maff and or Dave. But this week is something a bit different, and it's going to be a bit different for, I think, because I might have coaxed these two into my plot. We are tackling something called Clone Wars Legacy. So it's a multimedia project, and there are 3 parts to Clone Wars Legacy, so very in brief, and then we'll get to talk about this actual thing. But essentially, Clone Wars got cancelled partway through Season 6, which we spoke about in the last episode, and because of that, Clone Wars was unfinished, so certain arcs of Clone Wars, they essentially released into canon media in a variety of ways. Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, which on YouTube will be able to see the comic in the distance behind me. And then also there is the Dark Disciple novel, which I've tackled on the show a while back, which is about Sarge Ventress and Quinlan Vos. And then there's also 4 canon episodes of Clone Wars that were unfinished that are on YouTube for people to watch. So technically 8, but 4 of them got remade into Season 7. There's also a book called Ahsoka, which I kind of talk about in one of the other episodes I do, but I've told Maff not to listen to that episode because part of Ahsoka has flashbacks in it that spoils part of Season 7 of the Clone Wars, because that existed when we thought we weren't getting a Season 7 of the Clone Wars. So that's a lot of waffle. If you want more information, look it up. But basically, the next couple of weeks is going to be some content that is considered canon that was released when we thought we weren't getting any more Clone Wars. And this week is Son of Dathomir, Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir to be specific. And so this is actually based off 4 episodes of the Clone Wars, which was Enemy of My Enemy, A Tale of Two Apprentices, Proxy War, and Showdown on Dathomir. And this specifically fills the gap between what we see when we last saw Darth Maul, which was when, minor spoiler, but we've already tackled these episodes, so you should be on the ride with us, is when Big Daddy Palpatine came in, killed Savage Opress very easily, and then Maul was just left cowering in fear, and he gets captured. And then at some point, which again, not spoiling for Maff, at some point in Season 7, Maul pops up again and doesn't reference in any way, shape or form where he was, how he escaped, or anything. No one knows, unless you've read the comic. So that's the reason I wanted to delve into this. I wanted to get the full story so I didn't have to basically do this for like 20 minutes at the start of Season 7. When the questions are, where the hell has Maul been? These are the answers. But my friends, you've heard enough of me waffling, so let's hear from my amazing co-hosts. So Dave, we'll come to you first. So Dave, A, have you read this comic? And B, if not, did you know anything about it? Just some of the background about this comic before you went into the read for this episode.
So knew absolutely nothing about this comic. I read the Darth Vader run, the first volume, and the brilliant second volume. I also started the main run, so when Marvel took over, or when Disney took over the whole Star Wars universe, and then they started publishing the new Star Wars comics, I started reading those, and soon, yeah, exactly. So it put me off, if I'm honest, and it just really seemed to stretch out. Now, I think I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I'm kind of thirsting for more knowledge about how did we get from the end of one movie to the other? How did we get from New Hope to the beginning of Empire Strikes Back? And then I read it and I'm like, actually, I don't think I needed to know that. So I don't know what it. Maybe it's just the fact that they weren't that compelling in terms of the stories.
That is the case, I will say, unfortunately. There's 75 issues of this main Star Wars run from 2015, and I would say they're in collections of 6. 3 of them, phenomenal. Ashes of Jeddah is like the crew go to Jeddah after the events of Rogue One, and it's a really interesting tale of like Luke confronting the dark side, all kinds of stuff. That's amazing. But for every one of them that's awesome, the rest of them are just a bit weak, and there's no dramatic tension. That's the big problem. There's none. However, the 2020 run, written by Charles Soule, which is between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, when Han's frozen in carbonite, that phenomenal. Apart from 1 or 2 collections, and it's a lot shorter, as only 50 of them, they are way more consistent, way more interesting, and the growth of Luke and Lando is really the focal points of that. I'd say to anyone listening, check out the 2020 run of Star Wars comics. They dwarf the 2015 ones. I think they're actually not great. But sorry, Dave, back to you.
No, and I was just thinking as you were talking there, because so I didn't know anything about this run. I will question, I'm sure we'll get into it a bit more. Should it really been called Darth Maul? Son of Dathomir? I think it's stretching it a bit. It was bigger than Darth Maul for me, but they were going with that convention, weren't they? Because they had a Leia, they had a Lando Calrissian run as well. So they seem to be like Star Wars plus a name, and that was the theme. So I guess they were just being consistent with that. But as you were talking there, I was thinking, actually, what I need is for Mike to prescribe me some homework, because this did, honestly, I did get put off that Star Wars run, and then even though that Darth Vader run was absolutely brilliant, I think the sour taste of going through, and I persevered for ages with that Star Wars run.
So did I. People don't realize.
Put me off.
I did the same. I was reading the trade paperbacks. I gave up because they were so boring. Yeah. And then when I started Star Wars comics in canon, I decided to pick them up again, and that's when I got back into it. So people who know me as the massive Star Wars fan, if I hadn't started Star Wars comics in canon, I wouldn't have even finished them.
Yeah. But I'm glad you've sort of prescribed us this one, to be honest, because it feels very Clone Wars. I read it a couple of times because you go through it, and when you're reading something and then you read a bit of it and then you come back maybe a week later, you're like, oh, where was the story again? Or, so I ended up going through it a couple of times, but the second time I went through it, it really felt like it should have been a Clone Wars. And then I had a little bit of sort of sorrow that I was thinking, oh my God, how good would this have been if we'd have seen this, around that season 6 time where the animation. Yeah. And
some of those battles.
Yeah, it's a real grand scale, but it also shows what you can do with comics as well, because the like I say, you would think the animation, the budget for these episodes, those last 2 episodes, certainly would have been quite high because there would have been lots of things going on. But I'm really happy that we tackle this one.
And I will say something I forgot to mention in my preamble, is this is the only piece of content in existence outside of the 6 original Star Wars films and the Clone Wars series 1 to 6, which is both canon and legends. It's the only piece of content. So this content, when it came out, was just at the sort of cusp of the Disney canon reset. So this got originally published by Dark Horse and then got republished by Marvel. So it's the only piece of content that's been published by both Marvel and Dark Horse, which is canon, and also fits both in the canon's continuity and the legends. It's the only comic. And it's funny because I've read other pieces and I'm like, I've read other Legends comics. I'm like, this would fit, but this is the only one. It's quite interesting. But Maff, let's go to you. I've got another point about the comic stuff, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Maff, you listened to quite a lot of Star Wars comics in canon before we started this collaborative project. So I'm interested, had you heard of Son of Dathomir? Did you know about it? What did you know before reading? And then loosely, how'd you find it?
Well, I found it on Marvel Unlimited.
Very good. Quite nice dad joke there.
I was going to listen to a podcast by the guy called Mike, who does like Star Wars comics in canon, but I got told not to because I think it was your second episode. That you did.
It's because I talk about the Ahsoka book, and I literally the point of that podcast was, I think it was just before season 7 of the Clone Wars was coming out, so it was literally like. Right. Because that, I think, came out 2020, and I think I started Comics in Canon in 2020, so I was like, loads of people are going to be asking me, specifically, and they did, what happened to Maul, so I just released an episode about it.
It's weird. I think Dave's right. It would be nice if they could maybe kind of condense this into probably 2 episodes.
It was originally 4. Each issue was an episode.
I mean, they are quite quick. They're quite snappy. I do have issues with it and that, but I do feel that it kind of gives me an idea of what's happening. And now, I mean, you've just said that Maul does turn up in season 7, at the end of this, I thought, well, Maul's got to be part of season 7 now. If this is canon, if this is kind of part of there's got to be more to it. So season 7 now has got me thinking, right, obviously, Maul's going to be in there. There must be a big hoo-ha, because the thing is, we see him in Rebels, don't we?
We do, yeah.
And in Rebels, he's still leading the Mandalorians because he's got the Darksaber. Is that right? Yeah.
Well, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with anything you're saying.
In Rebels, he had the Darksaber.
He does have the Darksaber, yes.
Well, no, hang on. He doesn't lead the Mandalorian. He leads the Night Watch. Death Watch is who he's leading.
He does have a strong connection to Death Watch, but I can't discuss much more because you're getting very close to the grain. I mean, also, the thing is, I wouldn't...
Can we just go watch season 7 so we can
no, I'm teasing you as much as possible. The thing is, as well, is that I wouldn't have said Maul was in it, but the thing is, on the poster for Clone Wars, the final season, he's at the front. And also, the thing is that because you've seen Rebels, if you hadn't seen Rebels, I would just say he's coming back in animation in some form. But because we're so close to season 7, and what I don't want you to do is maybe think, I know you wouldn't necessarily do this without checking, but I wouldn't want you to Google Darth Maul, see something, go, oh, that's Darth Maul doing something I haven't seen before. Click on it and then, ruin stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those things. When I see something, I think, oh, I'll just Google that and see what. Now with Star Wars, it's like with Skeleton Crew, I'm being very picky what kind of... I mentioned to you the other day about who I kind of thought who Jod could be. But then you Google a little bit and think, oh, how much can I actually look without spoiling something for me? So I'm enjoying the project, but there's certain times it's like, I just want to know.
Isn't that fun, though? Like, I've saying to Megan, I've not been more excited to watch episode 3 in my entire life than since doing this, because at Christmas, we watched the Harry Potter films, because Megan always likes to watch them, and so we watched them while doing Lego. And I was like, I don't really fancy them. And she's like, what would you want to watch? And I was like, what I really want to watch is Star Wars episode 3. She's like, why don't you just tell them that you've watched it? They won't mind. I was like, no. We've all agreed. We're not going to watch episode 3. I haven't seen it in a year or two. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna wait. If Maff has to wait for season 7 of the Clone Wars, then I can wait for watch Revenge of the Sith for the 40th time. But I will say, at least the good thing is once we've done with Clone Wars, although we are going to delve into Bad Batch and Tales of, aside from a couple of things in Tales of, there won't be any. I won't be putting a barrier on anything you can Google, because Bad Batch is pretty self-contained. It's all about clones, but aside from the characters within it, it's pretty self-contained. So after we finish Clone Wars season 7, I'll be like, whatever you want to Google, go ahead.
With season 7, will we finish that and then go to Revenge of the Sith, or is there a kind of an in-between bit?
So what we'll do, we'll finish season 7 of the Clone Wars.
Right.
We'll rejoice, talk about all that. Then we'll do, recording-wise, we'll do like a wrap-up episode that I imagine Megan will probably pop in for. And then we'll just be able to talk about favourite episodes, highlights, like a real overview, because I don't want us to do that in season set. I know you don't know what happens in season 7, but the season 7 finale, we will not have time to talk about the whole season. All you want to talk about is what happened. So we'll have a separate episode of that. Then we'll do an episode of Revenge of the Sith. And then Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire. It's 4 arcs essentially about different characters who have appeared in animation in some form.
Dooku, a young Dooku in it.
Yeah. There's also each episode is split in different places, so it's like you get to find out. There's a couple of loose ends in Clone Wars, or a couple of things where you go, I wonder what this character was doing before Clone Wars. Well, here's your answer. So it's kind of like a DLC almost, or like an epilogue kind of thing, an epilogue and a prologue for Clone Wars at the same time. So it's good to watch. It's not like you have to watch this or you won't understand anything, but it ties up a few loose ends.
Yeah, but yeah, as I say, it just kind of fill out, and it kind of gives you an idea. And obviously, not knowing what's to come, but knowing Maul's going to come at some point, I think they probably did need this.
Yeah, and when you see it as well, you'll be thanking me that you've read this, because
as I said, there are issues with it. There's something that happens near the end, and I'm like, really annoyed me. But
I can imagine what that is.
But at the same point, I'm starting to think now. Maybe this will paint me in a bad light, but I'm starting to think my favorite character in all of Star Wars is possibly Palpatine.
He's so good, isn't he? It's so hard to hate him. So hard to hate him because you're like, such a planner.
Even with what happens in this, and I don't think he was expecting this. I don't think he thought at all seeing this happen. But how he pivots and turns it to his advantage, it's like, how dark he is.
Oh yeah, we will.
There is no one darker.
We will get into that. Don't you fret. Don't you fret. So we'll delve in. I'll say that chronologically speaking, so this Son of Dathomir, so this is after episode 16 of season 5, Lawless, which is when, Maul kills Satine. And then it's before season 7. And this, what is now season 7, most of it would have been in season 8 or 9 if Clone Wars had continued as long as you wanted it to, but this part would have been in season 7, so it's like season 6.5. And then to reference what Dave said about comics, when we do the Clone Wars pod, the wrap-up thing, in there we'll delve into what we're doing for the future of this kind of project we're doing and stuff, but I do have loose plans of each year when we're doing stuff out of movies and stuff. I'll probably say there'll be the odd time we do a comic and we just chat about a specific comic, but also you guys will be free to read whatever you want. So if you want just stuff focusing on something cool, I've got a few recommended readings at the end of this to do with Darth Maul and things as well, if you want more info on Darth Maul. But don't fret, friends. Any listeners, we've got, if no other Star Wars content comes out, we've got at least 3 years of content if we release one episode a month. So, and that's animation, film, and also the comics. But we'll delve in because there's lots we want to talk about here. And there's 4 parts. So, as I said, this was released May to August of 2014, right in the middle of the Disney canon reset. It was reprinted for Marvel in 2017, because I said in 2014 it was under Dark Horse. And then we've got the writer, I haven't done this in so long, it feels really weird to me, because Star Wars Comics in canon was quite a while ago, I stopped doing that. So the writer is Jeremy Barlow, the penciler is Juan Frigeri, the inker is Mauro Vargas, and the colour artist is Wes Dzioba, or Dzioba. So there's 4 issues. So issue 1, we've basically got Palpatine is trying to get Dooku to use Maul to lure out Mother Talzin to eradicate her. And Palpatine has got Maul in chains and basically held up somewhere on a place called Stygian. Now, I've got 1 or 2 little tiny notes here. So Stygian is actually in Star Wars Rebels. Kanan and Ezra in the season 1 go and try and find Luminara Unduli when Kanan doesn't think he's a good enough master for Ezra anymore. And they go off to the secret prison world that no one knows about, really. They find the corpse of Luminara that has been manipulated in some way to make them think that she's alive. That I was like, I remember Stygian from somewhere. So I looked it up and that's where it's from. So again, a Rebels connection to this, which is quite a bit of fun. But so the first issue, so I'll come to you then, Dave. How did you find sort of coming into this comic and things? I know you said you had to read it sort of twice or more to kind of get into it, but how did you find the comic? How did you find the vibe of this first issue?
So 2 things. First thing there, it's an amazing brain that you've got there to make these connections, to spot something and think, oh, I've seen that from somewhere before. I have more of a Dory approach. I started the story and I'm like, oh, fucking, where is this supposed to be then? Where was the last time I saw Maul? Why is he in? And then I thought, okay, yeah, he got his ass kicked. And then, okay, I could pick it up and stuff there. Went through that first issue and I thought it was solid, but again, with having a slight amnesia for what's his relationship with the Mandalorians now. He seems to be quite tight with them at the minute. You say about it, when we saw in the Clone Wars, Maul went into that real cowering, submissive opinion, and he's got a bit more sass, like straight away. He's obviously been tortured and stuff, and so I thought, well, that seems a little bit inconsistent, but maybe he was still scared, but now he's just had enough. But I don't know, it jarred with me a little bit that it was like that. But yeah, it was quite interesting straight off the bat, to Maff's point about Palpatine being a fucking bit of a legend, really. I think straight away the suggestion that, what you think is the plan isn't going to be the plan, and he's got another plan, and everything will happen as I have foreseen, kind of thing. So, yeah, a solid start, I thought.
Yeah, and we've got also Gar Saxon appears in this, who actually first appeared again in Star Wars Rebels. Then he does reappear in Clone Wars Season 7, and he was voiced by Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, who played Balin Skull in Ahsoka. Yeah. So Gar Saxon, when I saw him, I was like, oh, ding, I recognise him. Where do I see him from? Like, people think I've got this vestige of infinite knowledge of Star Wars. It's more like I'll read something and something in my brain will like go buzz, buzz, buzz. You've seen that before, and then I'll research into it. There's other bits I remember, but I also must say, remembering now, I may have said in this podcast, and apologies if I did, a character called Rael Averross I thought was the apprentice of Qui-Gon before Obi-Wan. That's not the case. Rael Averross was the apprentice of Dooku before Qui-Gon. I can't remember if I said that on air or not. Probably, if I have, no one even remembers it. But Maff and I were talking about some theories, and then I looked into. I was like, "Wait a minute, this doesn't sound right." And I looked into it, and my own memory is wrong. So I'm not infallible. But Maff, how have you found this first episode? So how do you kind of jive with this, going in more fresh and not knowing what's coming?
I could remember that Maul got taken, but then, as I say, that because that season 5. Yeah.
Partway through. It's episode 16 out of 20.
Yeah, so he got taken, and it's like, well, okay.
Well, after that's the temple bombing arc with Ahsoka. So immediately after an incredible episode, you've then got arguably the most important episode arc in all of Clone Wars.
Yeah, I think it kind of got overshadowed a bit there. So, but yeah, obviously seeing him kind of tied up, and then the kind of wanting to. I mean, I'd forgotten. I don't know if it'd been mentioned that Maul was actually Mother Talzin's son. I didn't realise that, or I thought, like, I mean, I don't know if they do it as much now, but when you say, oh, Auntie Susan, who's not really a real auntie, but she lives down the road and she knows you. I thought Mother Talzin was just kind of that's what they kind of called her, like, Mother Superior, or, I didn't realise that was actually his mother. Now, I'm thinking that maybe it did get mentioned when he got his legs back, when she gave him his legs.
I think he calls her mother, but everyone calls her mother.
Yeah.
So I think in this, it's meant to be a reveal. I think it's meant to hand-wavy explain how Maul is so much like more in tune, why Palpatine chose him as opposed to any of the other Night Brothers, why Talzin keeps doing all these things for Maul specifically, where she doesn't really seem as fussed by a lot of the other Night Brothers. Like, when she's just like, yeah, I don't give a shit about them. They're breeders. But Maul and Savage specifically, she's a lot more close with. Yeah, so I think this was one of the classic Star Wars things where they went, we need to figure out why she's so invested. Let's just say it's a biological son or whatever.
Because there's a point when I think Dooku kind of questions Palpatine. It's like, why is this? And he's like, when I took Maul, he says, I took it from his mother, and she lost a lot more than what she expected. And so then it kind of adds a little bit more of why they've got more of a, because, as we find out later on, she's kind of inside Maul, and that she's not possessed him as such, but
it's pretty close.
I think she's kind of used him as a vessel just to kind of move place to place. But you also, I don't remember whether it's the first issue or the second issue. There's a bit where she tells him to go to where is it? Ord Mantell.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you going to be there, Mother? And he's like, no. And the look of distress on his face of when he thinks he's going to actually, I mean, she's in within him, but we don't know what the entire plan is of how she's going to come back. And that. And I don't think he's fully aware. He just knows that he has to do certain things, which for all Maul he's a badass. We see him be a badass at times in this. I do feel for him because he's always someone's puppet throughout the entire time. I think the only point when Maul's actually not a puppet is a bit when he's in the desert finding Kenobi.
Well, one would argue he's the puppet to his own vengeance.
Well,
that's such a cop-out Yoda response, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that Kenobi shouts echoes in my head now, but you just feel for him. You feel that he could be so much more, but he's just always running errands for everybody else, and he's trying to be the good boy or the bad boy, and he's quite. I mean, especially you get to the end of this series, and you're like, oh, again, another good punch for him.
Him and Kenobi have a very, very, in canon, him and Kenobi on the opposite ends of the morality spectrum.
Similar, kind of.
So, well, think about it. Like, Maul lost Savage Opress, really because of his own hubris and going against his old master. How does Obi-Wan lose Anakin? He fights him, he basically mutilates him, and then the Shadow Master takes him. Obi-Wan loses the love of his life. It's because of Palpatine.
Because of Maul as well.
It's because of Maul, sorry, but Maul then... But there's a lot of parallels there between them of just the purity and the not. And I really like... I love Maul because I love it. Like, he's in pain and you do feel bad for him, but also you don't at the same time. It's like... You do kind of deserve this because you are inherently evil and sadistic, but also I am kind of rooting for you because you are really cool and you've spent so much time and effort planning this. Even if you're a bad person, you spent so much time meticulously planning all these things, and then Palpatine just comes over and just brushes it all off the table every time.
That's one of the best things about Palpatine, because at this point when you think he's got the upper hand and he's, it's for everyone when he's speaking to Dooku. And he's like, join us, and we can. And Dooku's like, he's just you just don't learn.
Palps is just so powerful. It's just silly.
We've said before in a previous episode, it's like, why is Dooku Palpatine's apprentice? It's either that or we're going to die. Your choice is you either do all this bad stuff for me, or I'm going to kill you. So
100%. Well, one of a very minor spoiler, not for Clone Wars. One of the tales of the Jedi arcs is all about Dooku. So we do get a bit more about him. And I think it's really, really interesting. I really like that stuff. But before we get into issue 2, Dave, I want to come back to you just because Maff then spoke quite a bit about Maul. And I know that you had some comments about it felt a bit jarring. Now, I have a thought on that, but I want to... Bless you. My thought theory will say, from where he is in season 7, not giving anything away... I think this comic shows kind of when we last saw him, which was cowering, and then where we see him in season 7, again, not spoiling anything, he's at the point where he has really nothing. Savage is gone. He's got no hope with Palps. He's got nothing. And so where he is in season 7 and some of the actions that he takes, I think makes a lot of sense. And I feel like, only now thinking about it from your comment, Dave, that I think this comic does bridge the gap of Maul's now lost everything. He's got nothing to lose. So I wonder with you, Dave, again, without spoiling season 7, a bit more of your thoughts on Maul in this.
Yeah, so I mean, to my previously mentioned amnesia, I couldn't spoil season 7 if I wanted to. But you're definitely right. So where he starts this arc, if you like, and where we saw him in his very submissive position, he's been tortured, he's given a bit of ass back, but he's rescued. And I liked his comment, because when he thinks the plan is a bit crap, he calls out the Mandalorians and then they just blow out the side and nope, this is the plan. So I quite like that bit, but you're right, it basically stripped away everything from him here, and sort of jump into the end of the arc. Really, I must admit, when I went through the whole arc the first time, I was thinking, well, fucking hell, what was the point in her coming back then? But then it wasn't about her really. It was more about him, and where he started from. He's got not everything, because he's still being tortured by old Palps there, but he does have the backing of the Mandalorians. He knows Mother Talzin's out there, but there's a moment where people are basically dragging him away at the end, and you feel like, oh, he's lost everything, his maternal mother and all that, with that, like you say, being the reveal. So yeah, I still think calling it a Darth Maul arc seems like a stretch to me. But if you look, I guess he is the one character that changes the most through the story. Grievous is in there, Dooku's in there, Palps is in there, but they're all the same at the start of the arc as the end of the arc. So maybe I'm being a bit too critical there and saying I don't think it should have been called a Darth Maul comic, but I mean, it just seemed bigger than that to me.
It is, but let's be honest, it's marketing. Anything with Darth Maul or Darth Vader either written or visually on the cover, it just sells more. That's why they keep doing the Darth Vader series. There is no there's like 2 time periods left of like 3 years that there's barely any Vader content, and that's essentially slightly before the Kenobi show and slightly after the Kenobi show, and that's it, because he's been used in Rebels loads. Obviously he's in the original trilogy. He actually fights Luke Skywalker in the comics about 5 times outside of the movies, and you just get, this is getting a bit, it's kind of like when every time Dooku fights Anakin and you're like, in the movie, you were like, you're twice the pride. Oh, well, my powers have doubled since last time we fought, Count. Yes, we're twice the pride, double the fall. You're thinking, yeah, this is the first time we fought since Attack of the Clones. No, it was the first time they fought since, like, 2 months ago. You're just like, that does kind of take away from it a bit.
The thing is that there's always this, I mean, you mentioned it in Skeleton Crew with Tanya that you did. One of the things about Rebels is good is one, the family aspect, but you don't know who's safe. Mm-hmm. Whereas you've got Maul, he's safe, because obviously we know where his story does end.
Well, even in Solo, he canonically, if season 7 didn't exist and this didn't exist, we would still know he survives because he pops up in Solo, even if you hadn't seen Rebels. So there's no illusion that Maul is alive, unfortunately. That does spoil it a bit.
Palpatine, obviously. Grievous, Dooku, we know they're all fine. So you kind of think, what stakes are there? But there is a bit more to it. I mean, I don't know if this has been before, but like Gas Saxon, when he turned up, did he have the pointy helmet? Have we seen him before?
I believe the Gar Saxon, this is his first appearance.
Right.
And I think essentially there's a term which I don't think they ever say in universe, but it's called a Maul DeLorean. And I mentioned it once on this podcast as a tease ages ago, but I didn't make a fuss about it. So it's essentially in this comic, and then a very little hint is because where this comic ends. So it's inevitably, the comic ends and he's with the Mandalorian. So where he picks up, there's either going to be a mention of them or a reference to it. And that's the only thing I'm saying about that. But the Maul DeLorean's aesthetic, I really like. But Gar Saxon, I can't remember specifically, but I know in Rebels, he's aligned with the Empire. And from memory, he's one of the ones who's wearing, the Mandalorian outfits are like Stormtrooper gear. Yeah. When Sabine goes back home, he's one of the main people supporting the Empire. Right. So take that information what you will.
Maybe it's, but I mean, there is one interesting thing near the end of the comic.
Yeah.
Gar Saxon hands Maul the Darksaber. There's no challenge. There's no fight. It's as if like we've been holding it for you because we've been waiting for you to come back. There you go. And I thought that's quite an issue because all the previous dealings I've seen with the Darksaber, it's always had to be fought for. There's always had to be except for when what's his name?
It's when Sabine gave it to
twice then. That's man. Why am I blanking on
the Mandalorian's name?
Yeah.
Din Djarin.
Yeah, he gives it to
Bo-Katan. He tries to, and then I think she initially rejects it, and then she eventually accepts it again. But she won't accept it because she says that she lost it she basically lost it to Gideon. She had it. Gideon captured her and took it off her, so she can't accept it again, just given to her because it's not honourable. I will say the Darksaber lore, it's kind of like how strong is Superman and Batman. It's like what's the lore around the Darksaber? Whatever needs to be written. Right. Hand wavy way, I'd probably say Gar Saxon probably knows what happened to Paz Vizsla, Pre Vizsla, who was Jon Favreau's character, who was meant to be one of the best Mandalorians for combat. And Maul wiped the floor with him and killed him in front of everyone to take over Mandalore. So I feel like Gar Saxon's probably like, I'm not going to beat him. So I might as well just, if he, there's no point. And Mandalorians, they worship, in air quotes, strength. They respect strength. And Maul, if nothing else, is pure brute strength. And so he is the Mandalorian's dream if he's on their side. And because the Mandalore at this point, you got to think like, they don't really go into it in the comic. I think they do touch upon it in season 7 of the Clone Wars, but Mandalore is in shambles at the moment. It was already in shambles. Then you've got the pacifist ruler or duchess, Satine, who kind of brokered peace. Jobs were coming back. The medical system was okay. Mandalore was kind of evening out, even if it wasn't a warrior place. But then she gets murdered. There's a civil war that happens. Maul kind of invades and kills people and stuff. And then Olmec is put back in, who's a corrupt leader. And so I think Mandalore at the moment is really in flux. So I feel like they're like, look, we just need someone to just help us become warriors again. I think, but I do agree. The Darksaber giving away lore thing, I think canon, it's been given away as many times as it's been won in battle, which does take away from it a little bit.
I mean, it's a bit like a poison chalice in one sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
it's like Game of Thrones. As soon as you've got the power, everyone wants it back.
Thinks, "Oh, where's his weak spot? Where can I then take him out to?" We do get mention of the Black Sun and the Pikes as well. That they're still with
part of the Shadow
Maul.
Collective.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Because the Huts was part of that as well.
They were. I think
originally.
They stayed neutral. When Maul was trying to do the criminal underworld stuff in the episodes we saw referring to Lawless, I think what basically happened is he outpowered them, and then the Hutts just kind of were like, okay, you can have it. Don't bother us, please. And so they just kind of... The Hutts, again, there'll be a comic series that we might actually tackle at some point in the show in the years to come, but the War of the Bounty Hunters arc and the Crimson Reign and Hidden Empire collection between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, that really goes into Crimson Dawn's affiliation with a lot of the other crime syndicates and what was happening to the crime syndicates while the Empire was busy fighting the rebellion. And it's really interesting seeing some of the Game of Thrones style house fighting over who owns what clan. And so I think that from me reading and understanding that, I think I have a fairly good understanding of the criminal underworld to a degree, but you've played more Outlaws than me. So
yeah, it's again, Outlaws is... It's fine, but there's something missing from it. But at the same point, you want to know more about office syndicates. You kind of think, I mean, I can't remember what the lady who runs...
Kira?
Yeah. She's really cool. And it's like...
Well, she's the centre of 3 whole comic crossover events. And she gets even more badass, I'll tell you that.
That's one of the things. It's like, I want to know more about her. So maybe that could be my homework.
I would recommend it. It is really good. And that connects with the Styles 2020 comics. It's like all this intersecting crossover stuff, but a lot of it is repeated. So we'll delve into that at some point. But if we rein back into the comic at hand, so we'll I know we all want to talk about the final issue because that's the big boys, but we'll loosely talk about issues 2 and 3. So issue 2, they go to Ord Mantell. Maul and Grievous kind of try to out-strategize each other, which I quite like. That was quite fun, quite different. And I really like how essentially everyone below Palpatine, it's like Grievous isn't the best strategist. Maul out-strategizes him. Dooku out-strategizes him. Maul cleverly out-strategizes Dooku, but Palps is just out-strategized everyone, or rather Talzin, I'd say, strategically outmatches Dooku, then Palps does them all. So we've got that. We've got lots of fighting. We've got Talzin, who gets some Night Brothers who show up, and then Dooku pops up and then wipes out all those Night Brothers, which I love that scene. You've got Maul boards Grievous' ship and takes him prisoner and basically says, turn off all your droids or I'm going to kill you. And because Grievous is a coward, obviously that's what he does. And then Dooku says he wants to eradicate all the Night Brothers and wipe basically all life from Dathomir off the map, essentially. Maul captures Grievous and Dooku gets captured by the Mandalorians or Mauldalorians. And then we've got the kind of the last 2 issues are kind of a big act together, and we'll just waffle on about those. But Dave, I want to ask you, with Grievous and the Night Brothers and Dooku and anything before the kind of big finale, the crescendo, your favourite word, what did you think about all that and Grievous in the comic, or anything before we get to the big boy battle?
So I do think I feel like there were some highlights. I feel like the first issue was really strong. It works. Really strong. And then I feel like it lulled a little bit. I feel like we got a bit of Kenobi and Mace Windu, talking to the Emperor just to show that the Jedi are there, I guess. What I like about the whole arc actually is this is not really about the Jedi versus the Sith. This is about, all people who you would say are on that evil side, jostling for position. So yeah, I enjoyed that. I loved basically Count Windu taking names. Like he seems against all the Night Brothers and whatever. It seems like he's up against it, but he's got no doubt in his mind he's going to wipe the floor with all of them, and he does. And I thought that was a quite badass moment from old Dooku there.
I mean, Dooku in this is shown to be really powerful, which I like.
Yeah, apart from when he gets well, actually, and we'll talk about it at the end because he kind of gets taken over, doesn't he? But up to that moment, I think it showed him to be really quite strong in this arc. I will say, I did spot, I would say I'd never remember the different aliens and stuff unless they were in the cantina in New Hope. I did spot Tipley, though.
Ah, yes, you did. I've got that written down.
Yeah, so
Very good.
yeah, so because she's quite distinctive, and so I was like, have I seen her? And yeah, so obviously, what was
Tiplar was her.
Tiplar was a sister who was shot by fives. So I thought,
or Dogma. It's in the arc with fives, but yeah, shot by Dogma because it's Fives is the one who unravels the mystery.
Sorry,
of the
yeah. Fives goes.
Don't besmirch my boy. Fives is my favourite. He didn't shoot anyone.
Oh, I just lived his murder all over again. Yeah, so yeah, I thought that was a good little spot, and also it made it feel like Clone Wars as well with her being there and sort of thinking back to that episode. So yeah, I thought it was a bit of a come down from the first issue, like I say, but I still feel it was quite strong. And again, you're seeing everyone jostling for position, which was quite cool.
And the species at Tiplar and Tipliar are Mickeyans, so they've got their head tendril things. And there's a major character in the High Republic who is a Mickeyan, so that's why I can remember the name off the top of my head. But Maff, what do you think of Grievous and this kind of stuff before we get into the big boy?
I mean, again, you see Grievous being quite badass. The bit when they kind of capture him, I suppose it's the point when, I don't know, he seems to have taken names of all the Night Brothers at that point, and then the Mandalorians kind of turned up. So I think you do kind of think, should he have fought them, but they're in Mandalorian armor, so it's like, what could he probably do there?
But he's also a coward. If you don't forget that either he's basically, if he's a level 6, he'll kill level 1 to 5. As soon as he goes against another level 6, he's a coward. You think in like Revenge of the Sith, he runs away. Every time he pops up and he fights someone who's his match, like Kit Fisto or Obi-Wan, he just runs. Every time.
Yeah,
at the start of Revenge of the Sith, I know obviously you can't remember it as well as I can, but the start of Revenge of the Sith, Mace literally says, after Grievous runs away in the first sort of scene, they go, well, what should we do? Should we chase after him? And Mace just goes, look, he's just going to run and cower like he always does. Let's not worry about him at the moment. We know he's in this system. We've got other big important things to worry about rather than chasing Grievous down. So he is kind of like that.
Yeah.
He's a bully, really.
Oh, sorry. I meant Dooku, not Grievous.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, no, because Grievous is on the ship with Maul. Because Maul infiltrates the ship.
Yes.
To turn all the droids.
Well, he had Mandalorians with him, so that's what your I think your wallpaper
But he
is.
only has a few of them, but this is afterwards.
Oh, it's right there. Oh, nice.
Dooku fights a lot of the Night Brothers, and then the Mandalorians turn up, and it's like, that's enough.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you can see on his face of like, it's as if he's questioning, can I take them? But they're in Mandalorian armor. They are built to fight Jedi, Sith, whatever you want to
Force users.
it is.
Yeah.
So they were partly thinking, go and have a go, but at the same point, I thought, he's outnumbered. He's taken the Night Brothers out quite easy, but they're like savages, really. They've just got sticks and stones, and that. But yeah, I will take your point with Grievous, though, going back to that. He is that coward.
Yeah.
He's that. He's the bully of the playground, isn't he? He goes around,
and as soon as someone comes up here and like punches him once, he cries and runs away.
Yeah. So
with Dooku, I see your point. I would argue that I think that Dooku kind of let it happen a little bit, because the whole point that Palp says to him is, look, you need to get Mother Talzin out. That's the whole point. That's the first conversation they have. He's like, any means necessary. We have to try and wound Maul consistently, but lead him so he thinks he's got the upper hand, so he can draw Mother Talzin. That's the big thing. Which
makes kind of sense, because he does give up quite easy, but yeah, that's his goal. And I suppose there'll be part of him that thinks that his master isn't going to let him fall into the wrong hands. there's going to be out for him.
Well, don't forget that Palps can force choke people from a hologram. So if Dooku got caught and started opening his mouth, Palps would just kill him.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I kind of thought, oh, could he have done a bit more? But at the same point, no, he can't. And then we get the scene with Maul talking to Mother Talzin, and she says, "Go to So
Ord Mantell is where
Ord Mantell.
Yeah, that's in this thing. So they fight on Ord Mantell, and then they go off to a place. I think they end up in Dathomir, but yeah, I think Ord Mantell, and then there's a place called the Zambar in the first issue. Ord Mantell's I think the second issue, and then the third issue I think they might still be on Ord Mantell, but I think in the third issue I was a bit confused where anyone was, because I've got written down the locations in 3. I was like, is it Ord Mantell? Are they going to Ord Mantell? I don't know. They end up in Dathomir.
No, I think Ord Mantell is where they go, because that is told to go there at the end of issue 2.
Yeah, okay.
And that's obviously where they've gone.
Okay, yeah, because a lot of the stuff happens on the ships and yeah. Well, this is the thing I find with the comic. I do like this comic.
We also see Cody as well.
We do see Cody, yeah, who Megan hates. She's like, he's a baddie. He shot Obi-Wan, and I'm like, well, yeah, but he was kind of, there's a reason for it. And she's like, nope, he's a baddie. So I like these comics. I feel like if this was on screen, it would be a lot better. I think a lot of our issues with it, I think there's a lot of nuance that gets missed in these comics. I think when you have a comic run that's written by one of the comic behemoths like Alan Moore or something, because it's written in a format that's for being a comic, you can get nuance, you can get facial expressions, you can get subtleties. I think with this, it was not a rush, because I think the comic's really good. It is a good comic, but because of the quality of the Clone Wars at this sort of point, I think our expectations are a bit higher. And I think this comic is a solid comic, but there are bits we don't quite get. You don't get Dooku when he interacts with certain Jedi or certain characters. He has a certain smirk. He has a certain way about him. Sometimes he's a bit cocky. Sometimes he tries to be a bit more like kind of stoic. And I think these nuances with characters like Dooku, characters like Maul that we've all kind of discussed here, I think you do lose a little bit of that in this, especially because we've spent so much time getting used to these characters. And we've been doing this project now for about a year. So like we've spent basically a year, not specifically Maul, but like a lot of these characters, seeing them on screen and grow and change as characters. And seeing them on comic is almost like receding a little bit, in a sense.
Having said that, the first, I'm just looking now, that first one where we see Palpatine and he's talking to Mace, he's got his back to Mace, and there's Mace says Darth Maul, and there's that kind of little bastard's got out. But then he turns around and he's like, oh dear. And then, how could we have not seen this? And maybe they're the two, the Sith and the Master and the Apprentice.
And the Jedi think that. The Jedi go, that must be the case. Dooku clearly must be the Master, even though the entire Clone Wars we've been thinking Dooku surely can't be the Master. And there's like, oh, well, all wrapped up in a nice little bow then, isn't it? So let's delve in. Very briefly, I'll skim over these bits and I'll come to you, Dave, because I know you love talking about Jedi conspiracy and how Palps is always pulling the wool over. So very quick, and then from here, we'll just talk about whatever bits we kind of want as we get nearer the end. But part 3, essentially, Palpatine tells the Jedi about Maul and Dooku on Ord Mantell, so they can investigate. And Maul is trying to get... tries to basically bargain with Palpatine, and he's like, well, I'll kill both your guys. And Palpatine's like, all right, go on then. I don't care. I've already got other thing in my sight. Sorry, Maff, you're going to chime in there. Oh, no, you were doing the, you're pointing to your background. Sorry. I couldn't quite see, because I can see now Palpatine there. There we go. All the video users can see it. Perfect. So, yeah, and then, Dooku frees Grievous with the Force. Grievous, brutally kills some clones. He's got, like, blood on his claws at one point. It's amazing. Obi-Wan and Tipley show up with Cody, and I remember seeing Tipley, and I was like, I don't remember her showing up again. And then literally 2 panels later, she gets killed. And I was like, there it is. There it is. I wonder what happened to her. Mace and Aayla Seclura pop up and then immediately get knocked out by Mandalorian Rocket, which I think is a bit convenient because Mace pretty much never gets knocked out, but whatever. Mace talks to Palpatine and then says, I think Dooku's the Master and Maul the Apprentice. And then that just shows how fucking useless they are. And then part 4, you get back onto Dathomir. Maul knows Dooku's plan. Then it's basically the big fight, and it shows that Talzin basically is using Dooku's essence to resurrect herself to get a physical form. There's a big old fight, and then there's certain casualties. So that's the wrap-up-y bit. So, Dave, what do you want to talk about in these 2 parts? Anything at all?
So, I mean, you've sort of led me to it there, but again, it just seems like Palpatine is just in plain sight, isn't he? And like you say, it must be Dooku and Darth Maul, and this is going to be really bad for the Republic, and the Jedi just swallow up whatever he throws out to them, don't they? So I do like that. I do like the fact that the comic sort of continues that same theme that we saw in the Clone Wars. I mentioned about Tipley. I thought that was a brutal piece of artwork, the way she got taken out as well, and after her sister I guess we know all the Jedi get slaughtered anyway, but just I don't know why I just wasn't expecting it in this particular comic. But like I say, before I'd seen where she got killed, I'd gone and saw where do I recognize her from? Oh, I recognize her. Oh, she's dead. So yeah, I think again, despite what I said earlier about it being a bit of a lull, I do think it was, I think probably the lull was more episode 2. I keep saying episodes, issue 2, and then 3. It starts to build up, doesn't it? It's the penultimate, and you're thinking, oh God, how is Palpatine gonna, recover from this? Because you've got, it does look like Dooku and Maul are together. So, how's Palps gonna, come back from this one? Quite easily is the answer.
I want to ask what I've still got you, Dave, is, and I'll pass the question then to Maff after, but what do you think specifically about the action scenes? Because earlier on you mentioned about how cool would it have been to see this in Clone Wars, and really reading this now after we've been specific, because, I read this ages ago, and so reading it directly after the Clone Wars, like when we get to Dark Disciple, there's some bits in there and you go, God, I wish that was in Clone Wars because of the lore. But there's not like a big scene that happens in the book that you're like, I wish I could see that in Clone Wars. In this comic, that end, when you've got, even any of it, you've got Maul versus Grievous, you've got Maul versus Dooku, you've got Dooku versus like Grievous with like Talzin controlling his body, and then you've got Palpatine fighting them, and also the Jedi, I've seen the prior issue pop up as well. Specifically regarding the action, the way it's drawn and put together. What did you think about how that is, Dave?
I mean, what I like about it is it feels kinetic. You feel like, again, you're robbed of seeing it in actual animation. But again, I'll go to the Tipley murder, if you like. The way she's drawn, you can see her being, in one panel, she's being pulled by the Force. And then in the next, you've got Dooku just putting a lightsaber right through the middle of her. So it feels like it has real movement to it, and lots and lots of action scenes, like you say, that are good, but you're missing a few seconds in between each panel. And so yeah, I don't know if we'll ever get this in some kind of animation, or not the exact same story, but certain, from someone else's point of view, maybe that might be interesting in the future. But I think the action was top notch.
I think at the moment, I don't know if there's any animated stuff rumored or in the works, but I know for a while. So we've got with the Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire. If they did a Tales of the Sith and they did 3 episodes about Maul, I think you'd have to put something about this arc in there, because in canon, like, as we'll get to it, and I'll come to you in a sec, Maff, but like, Talzin is dead. As far as I know, maybe she'll come up again and they'll go, oh, she resurrects herself, whatever. But this is where she dies. And she's actually quite a major character. Aside from the main characters, what she does, the episode she's in, she is quite substantial. And especially at bringing her back, I guess when she echoes died when she was fighting Mace in that Jar Jar episode that only just got released. With that, like, when she goes in that, you could kind of be like, oh, maybe she's dead. And I think in the Clone Wars, they kind of leave it ambiguous, but this is her actual death. So I wouldn't be surprised. I heard there were a while ago rumblings of a Maul series, and I would love an animated Maul series, fill in some gaps from Clone Wars, and everything he does up to Solo, then everything past Solo and how he got to Rebels. That, aside from a High Republic adult animated show, that's my number one want. But Maff, sorry, I waffled a lot there. So thoughts on action scenes and anything else that Dave or I just said?
Dave's right, that brutal when Duke. Although the thing is, I feel for Tipley, if he'd have probably sliced her legs off, she'd have been fine. But because obviously it's that one lightsaber through the stomach, then she's dead.
I think it's the spine.
It's deadly for Jedi.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's the spine. The only way I've ever seen it different, to be a Star Wars apologist, is when Moses Ingram's character in Kenobi got stabbed, when she got stabbed, when the Inquisitor gets stabbed in the Kenobi show, it's always the stomach, it's the side. But when we see Qui-Gon, it's right through the middle, and you see the whole out of his back at the base of his spine. When this happens, it's the spine. So I think, being a Star Wars apologist, if a lightsaber goes through your spine, even though surely you'd just be paralyzed, that kills you. But a lightsaber through your stomach, which would rupture and cause internal hemorrhaging and bleeding, that's fine.
So the fact that when Maul has his legs chopped off, I'm sure he probably goes through the spine at that point.
It does, but he has the hate. You have to forget, the dark side, okay, is the path to many unnatural abilities.
Let's back that up a bit.
I know. Who lives and dies. I mean, that's why Samuel Jackson, every interview when he talks about Mace, he goes, Mace is alive. And they go, well, he's dead. And he goes, think about everything in Star Wars. You've got so many characters survive way worse things than Mace. And Mace is like one of those badass characters. He goes, I'm cut off, electrocuted a bit and thrown off a building. He's like, we've seen Jedi survive worse. And it's like, he is right. He is correct. So they'll bring him back eventually, when people are like, I'm sick of Star Wars, they'll release a movie of Mace or something. But sorry, Maff.
Yeah. Going back again to Grievous, again, you see that, the bloodlust he says, so Dooku's not completely useless when he lets him out. But this goes back to him being the coward. Instead of going to help Dooku, he just fucks off. He just finds an escape pod and I'll see you later. Good luck. It's like, it's a weird one because when you think of Palpatine, he's got these 3 puppets and he uses them all for certain things. Why didn't he at some point kind of think, I'll bring them together and we'll have them work together and make it very clear that if you fuck us over, I will take you out. No matter where you are, he could do that. Which, I mean, that bit with Maul and he's talking, I'm sure that he could have probably reached across and force choked Maul. But I think he sees that point of, I can use this to my advantage of playing you guys to be bad guys and that. But yeah, I think he missed an opportunity of saying, like, you guys just get on. However you want to do it, get on and work together instead of that infighting all the time.
But does that work
managed it?
Have you been in a workplace before? You've got kids. Do you think?
But you haven't got a boss. You haven't got a boss like Palpatine. Like Palpatine, have you?
No, my boss is lovely. So especially if he's listening.
I think it's quite a Machiavellian thing that he's doing there. Mm-hmm. So if they did. If he did task them, you 3 go away, go on a weekend team building retreat or something like that, do some trust exercises, and they all come back like besties, Palpatine would be under threat then. So if they all actually worked cohesively together, I think Palps would be under threat. So I think it's quite a Machiavellian thing that he's doing to keep them all a little bit in the dark, all in a bit of a need to know basis.
He's a master manipulator, and I think the thing is also, I think Grievous and Dooku both think that they probably both think they're going to be when Palpatine reigns to power, they'll be his number 2. So they're like, I don't give when Palpatine rules the galaxy, Dooku can have that corner, I'll have that corner, and we'll both be happy with our little corners of the galaxy we own. Obviously not realizing that Palps was never really going to let that happen. I suspect if Anakin hadn't killed Dooku and Anakin couldn't turn, I imagine Palps would have just had Dooku around until something else better came. But Palps is always looking for the best thing. He just views humans, any living being, as a tool, really.
I mean, he says in this point where Maul's like going, look, I've got to catch this, like, kill him. I've got no need for him. And you think, well, okay. It's just obviously not.
And how do you bargain with that?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the point when Maul thinks he's got this power. It's like, I've got your 2 generals here. What are you gonna do? Fucking kill him. I'm not bothered.
And then Palpatine, I think, ends the transmission and just leaves him. He doesn't even stay and wait. He just goes, yeah, kill him, I don't care. And he goes. And then Maul is there like, What do I do now?
Well, I think Maul then kind of pivots and thinks, right, Dooku, join us. But then, like, Dooku's like, are you stupid? Have you not learned? And the only reason he kind of works with him because the Jedi is attacking. It's like that enemy of my enemies, you know. So again, forcing Palpatine knows this is coming. And that, there is also, it's not an asteroid, it's a base inside the asteroid, but pretty cool.
That was quite cool.
And that, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, that is no moon, or there's no asteroid even.
And it's a Mandalorian thing as well. I'm hoping that pops up again. I would really like to see that in, like, because you get, where Luke and Leia were born is an asteroid called Polis Massa, and that's technically where Luke and Leia's home worlds, their home worlds are, Tatooine and Alderaan respectively, but actually they were born on Polis Massa, which is like a medical facility in an asteroid. So there are bits like that, but I would love more of that kind of stuff, in things like Skeleton Crew or Mandalorian or things like that. I love, it's like in Guardians of the Galaxy when they go to nowhere and it's just that giant skull thing, and it was like, what is it? It was a galactic being that died billions of years or millions of years ago, so we just hollowed it out and made it like an underground paradise. I'm like, that is so cool, like a giant skull thing that you fly into the eye socket and it's like a underground base thing. I was like, I love it. I love that kind of stuff. I'm an absolute sucker for it.
We do, when we do get to him, that's the bit where they kind of actually say about Dooku and Maul being the master and the apprentice.
Yeah.
But again, it just shows that thing of Palpatine, again, why we love to hate him to a degree so much, because he's like, oh yeah, I can spin it this way now, I guess. This will work for me.
Well, the more Star Wars content you consume, the more you actually kind of side with Palpatine. Like, yeah, I don't agree with genocide of an entire religion and taking over the whole galaxy, but they did make it very easy. They really did not help themselves. They literally find out the whole clone plot, and they're like, oh, because I was editing that episode we did, and it cracked me up, where it was just literally like, oh yeah, let's just, when we're quoting Dave, which is just like, Sifo Dyas. Oh, Palpatine seemed to know something about him. Let's never mention it ever again. Just walk off. And you're like, this is why. Every time they get an answer, like a really easy answer, and then someone's like, is that too much of an easy answer? And they're like, nah, it's fine, don't worry about it.
I mean, they say about it, it's like with Thanos, it's like, well, Thanos wrong.
Well, there was that Reddit thread, wasn't there?
There's a great question, actually. Josh Boland, he went to one of the Comic Cons, and he said, you snapped your fingers to get rid of half the population. Why didn't you just double the resources? And it's like, next question.
I mean, I would argue that resources are finite, so you could double the resources, but that's not sustainable. Although I would also argue, you wipe out half the population, it's also not sustainable, but whatever. But I want to delve into, as we are getting near the crunch point, Mother Talzin. So, linking with something that Dave said earlier. So, Dave, you mentioned that this is called Darth Maul, and it doesn't on the surface seem like a Darth Maul story. And when you said that, I thought, you know what this feels like? It's really a Maul Night Sister thing, because this is really the last hurrah of the Night Sisters. Now, we know that there's a couple of Night Sisters that survived the genocide. One was Morgan Elsbeth, who's in the Ahsoka series and stuff, and Mandalorian. One of them is Sergeant Ventress, because she was there and she's in subsequent episodes. And then one is the character who's in Fallen Order and Survivor, whose name has completely escaped me.
Is it Mia? Maya?
I can't remember. It's in this book here, so I'll read the back of that in a second to remind myself. But the Night Sisters, this is the last remnant. The last person who's left really is Mother Talzin. So what do we think about Talzin and the eradication of the Night Sisters and to a degree the Night Brothers, and her arc and her connection to Maul, noting that, she basically force pushes Maul right at that last moment to save him, which I really like. So Dave, what do you think of Talzin and the Night Sisters and that kind of stuff in this arc?
Like I say, I think you've got it on the head there. I think it is more of a Night Sisters episode. It feels more like that, if we bring it back to Clone Wars. First time I went through it, I just thought, what is the point? It seems like from issue 1 all the way through, it's all about her and, defeating her. And then she's been in the ether or whatever, and then she brings out a physical form, and then I have to say the artwork on Grievous taking her out, I thought was absolutely amazing. I thought that was the highlight. Yeah, the highlight of the whole run. And they kills her off, and I'm like, well, what was the fucking point in that? But like I say, I enjoyed it a bit more going through it the second time, and just like, oh right, okay, so if it's more about Maul, and this was kind of closing off the Night Sisters as a thing. But yeah, I thought given that I like what you said about Grievous, because he is daunting, isn't he? I mean, if you just bumped into him and spilled his pint in a nightclub, you would be a bit scared of him. But that's because we're down on the rung, a few rungs down on the ladder, aren't we? It's only when he comes to someone who's equally as powerful or more powerful that he goes into his coward mode. But while Talzin's quite depowered and weak, he comes in like Bertie Big Bollocks then, doesn't he? And then just brutally kills her. So yeah, I think and like you say, it's like Kanan, but it was almost reminiscent of him, throwing back Ezra with the Force, and so even though Maul isn't the most sympathetic character, you do feel for him in that moment, because he's saying, "Take my strength," but she's basically pushed him away and then takes one for the team.
I agree with that.
I think she realizes at that point, doesn't she? She realizes the fact that she still seems quite weak. She's taken a lot of that's the thing. This was obviously before season 7 and that, but this does kind of feel like it. They've done this to kind of give Maul a purpose going further down.
Yeah,
and when I was saying when I kind of finished this, I thought, well, what was the point in that? This big 4 episodes of build up to Mother Talzin coming back, and then she's taken out, within a couple of panels. It's like, but what that kind of can bring forward for Maul later is, that's going to power him forward now. Maybe he's going to go from being a puppet to a certain degree, because although he's scared of Palpatine, he's not under Palpatine's strings anymore. Mother Talzin gone, he's not being controlled by her neither, so he's going to be on his own. Now, we've seen what he was like on his own before, but after he'd lost his legs and that, but he came back quite strong from that. He's now his peak physique to a certain degree, so where he goes next, and he's got a bunch of badass Mandalorians with him, you just think, now knowing he's in season 7, I can't wait. That is going to be awesome.
And that's the only hint you're getting. I'm not telling you anything else. That was the only hint that you're getting, just so you're not like, in honesty, if he wasn't popping up again, I would just tell you he's not coming up again, and this is the end of his story, which would be very disappointing. But at least if the story ended with this comic, it would make somewhat more sense going into something like Solo, because you could kind of in your mind loosely go, oh, he basically just went underground and hid. But there's more to his story. Just to clarify, the Night Sister I was speaking of, who is in the Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order games, and also this book here, is this one. She's called Merrin. She's a great character, really like her. Unfortunately, Sam Maggs, I do not rate this book very much. So if you're a big fan of Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order, you could probably skip this. But anything else on this? Because I know that there's loads of other cool things regarding this. I do want to say, actually, that I've got a little bit of information about Maul, which was he was born around 54 years before the Battle of Yavin, and then he was taken by Palpatine around 40 years before the Battle of Yavin. Phantom Menace happened 32 years before the Battle of Yavin. So Maul was taken in by Palpatine in canon about 8 years before the Phantom Menace, and that was when he was 14. So in the Phantom Menace, he was in his early 20s. So by this point, he's in his sort of mid 30s. Just for some loose context, I love knowing the ages of characters for some reason. So that's a fun little bit there. The Shadow Collective did get mentioned, which is Maul's criminal beginnings, because obviously Solo, where he ends up, is the top of Crimson Dawn. So there's a little few bits and pieces. But is there anything else you guys want to say about these comics that we haven't yet tackled before we do the wrap up and I give some recommended reading?
I will say, just as a bit of a nitpick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in Clone Wars, when we see Palpatine in his Emperor kind of get up, his face is quite covered by a shadow. So you can see that he's kind of animated the same way, but it's just his face is mostly covered. Here we could kind of, when he's in his Emperor getup, when he's being a Sith and when he's going up against Talzin, you can see a lot of his face. So there's a lot of lighting on his face, but he looks like almost the disfigured version of Palpatine, sort of post the battle with Mace Windu. So it just threw me off a little bit because it's like,
for that.
All right, oh.
See,
So I would excuse the yellow eyes, because when he's channeling the dark side or whatever, but he looked extra kind of wrinkly. And so go on then. What's the answer?
Matt, did you want to say something about it before I give the answer?
I thought the same. You do see a lot more of him. And it made me think of in...
Rebels?
No, in Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay, yep.
When we kind of see Vader kind of talks with Luke, and then the hood's off. You see all the wrinkles. It's like when he's actually channeling the dark side, it all comes out of him. And maybe when he's in Palpatine mode, it's like a mask he puts on that kind of, I don't know.
You're on the right
line. His complex.
There's no canon specific answer. There's no 100% guaranteed answer. So this could subject to change in the future. But essentially, the general gist of it, and it kind of supports this in Star Wars Rebels. So when you see Ezra I think it's the finale or right near the end, when Ezra is confronted by the hologram of Palpatine, and he's all good Palpatine, and he's like, Ezra, I can get you with your friends. And as soon as Ezra turns, he goes, the hologram changes, and he's back to bad Palpatine. Well, one of the ideas is that the dark side is all about manipulation. Palpatine can somewhat change his appearance. And essentially, what he had been doing is, although he'd been using a lot of dark side stuff, which if you use a lot of dark side stuff, eventually it starts to corrupt you. It's meant to corrupt you physically. And so what happens is that, allegedly, when he electrocutes himself, when he fights Mace Windu, and then he's laying at the Senate room, and then Anakin walks in and helps kill Mace. When he electrocutes himself and he's like, the Jedi have left me disfigured. The theory, which is loosely confirmed, is that him shocking himself broke that mask. And that's why he looks like that. The theory is his true form is actually what he looks like post-electrocute himself, because of the last 20 odd years of dark side magic and all kinds of weird behind the scenes stuff, and also having to conceal the dark side from the Jedi. Like, Jedi go, I can sense this, I can sense that. He's had to shut off all Force sensitivity while also trying to run the Republic and the Separatist army. And also, one thing I have a question about is, how does Palpatine keep getting away with disappearing to these random off-worlds, killing loads of people, and then coming back and going, yeah, I just had a little sabbatical. Yeah, the Supreme Chancellor of the Galaxy, yeah, I just fucked off for 2 days. I can't tell anyone where I've been. And that's never been addressed.
I've been waiting for you to sign all these forms, Senator. Where have you been?
Oh, yeah, I went to Canto Bight, did some gambling. Well, we didn't see you there. Your pleasure cruiser was gone. Just this weird cloaked vessel that's, for some reason, left the shipyard. So that's a bit of a plot hole. But I think it's a bit hand wavy, but it is generally like dark side stuff eventually does take its toll on you. Palpatine got really good at hiding it, but then the electrocutey stuff kind of made it come forward. So, because one thing I always notice is his teeth. When he's good Palps, he's got straight teeth, and when he's bad Palps, he's yellower and like broken teeth. And I'm like, that's a physical impossibility. So the way I do it is kind of like the way Luke did a Force projection of himself in Last Jedi, and that's using a thing that the Falanassi Force users use. And if a Jedi can project themselves over there, especially as Luke, let's not forget, when he projects himself to Kylo Ren, shows a younger version of himself without the long hair, without the long beard. In Last Jedi, he's brown hair, as Ben last saw him. So it's a physical canon possibility to be able to do. So in theory, the Master Manipulator is the most powerful Force user in canon. I kind of just think it is a mask. And so when he goes into actual Sith Lord mode, one of the reasons he's probably so smiling and so happy is like, I don't have to keep this veneer up. I can actually be my true self. Again, it's a bit hand wavy. It's never really been officially confirmed. I think it's just one of those Star Wars things.
Like Sith Botox. that he's got going on there. Or if you've seen The Simpsons, have you seen it where Bart he's got the handheld vacuum cleaner and he puts it on Grandpa Simpson and then he pulls all the wrinkles back. He goes, Grandpa Homer.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say with when they run out of money in Springfield and Kent Brockman, the newscaster, they've run out of Botox, so he's pegged his skin back. He's like pulled his skin back, put the pegs in. It's always like that. That's what I thought you were going to say. But that's my hand wavy thing. But it's a fair comment. I think it's a bit like the Anakin Skywalker becoming a Force ghost thing. Yeah, it's a bit of a plot hole. But is there anything else we want to discuss that we haven't already touched on? Maff, go ahead.
It's if things had played out a bit differently, that the kind of the standoff between Talzin and Palpatine, the kind of doing that shocker against each other, up until the point, Dooku kind of comes around and grants his power and starts
it's very Dragon Ball Z manga kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll give you my power to make the beam bigger.
But it's like Dave said, that that shield so no can come through, and the fact that Grievous just walks through it, were kind of that thing, and there's I've got it now. As he kind of comes through, it looks like his robot form's taking a bit of damage, but then it's that brutal thing of two sabers that just I'm ending you, and it got me thinking back to that Kanan, when he does just go, no, Ezra, off you go. And that, she did the same thing to Maul, which timeline showing wise, where is Rebels when it
Rebels
actually came
Series
out?
1 came out around 2013, 2014. I believe it was 2014. So this year was when season 1 of Rebels came out. So the finale of Rebels, I think, is 2018. So this is before that. But also just a minor correction: Kanan force pushes Hera. He force pushes Hera back on the ship, and he pushes the whole ship a bit out of the blast radius.
Yeah.
Oh, my boy. Yeah, there are some parallels.
We thought of a couple of murders today, haven't we? Fives and Kanan.
I know. And that's it. The more Star Wars you consume, the more connections. But yeah, that's. I really like that scene. I think it's a big crescendo. It's really interesting. Mother Talzin dying in that way is cool. The artwork of her corpse as the skin's falling off,
burning away.
Yeah.
I do feel if they do like a Tales of the Sith, if they could cover this in some form, this would be amazing.
Oh, I would love it.
It's a nice little package.
Yeah.
You don't have to kind of. I don't know what comes next, but if it finished there, you'd be like, I want more, but that's fine. I can take that.
But just think that when I was watching Clone Wars and stuff before 2020, okay, the episode you saw with Yoda, that was the finale, and then I got this, and that was kind of, and I was like, that was my finale for a long time. But I will say as well with the Tales, there are also rumors that Filoni's developing 3 live action Star Wars movies that are Clone Wars based. I am against that because I don't want the Clone Wars. I love it, don't get me wrong. And I wouldn't mind a few more, maybe a book or some comics around certain gap filling, but I don't really need more content. In the Clone Wars era, we've kind of done most of that. However, if they did a live action Darth Maul during the Clone Wars stuff, and it was a 2.5 hour movie, basically retelling Maul's whole journey from the craziness when he's on, I think it's Skako Minor or something, when he's there, and meeting Savage Opress all the way to the finale of season 7 of the Clone Wars, I would unashamedly be 100% up for that. But any other live action Clone Wars stuff, because I'm not that for. But yeah,
question then.
Go ahead.
If you to do that, you would have Ray Parks playing Maul.
Yeah.
Would you have Sam Whitted doing the voice still the way they kind of did in?
They did in Solo, and in Phantom Menace it was so in.
In Rebels, they kind of motion captured Maul.
Yes, they do a little bit in Rebels. They do a little bit of motion capture as well in a future animated thing we're going to be watching. But I think Ray Parks physically in Solo, it was Ray Parks. In Phantom Menace, it was Ray Parks. But in Phantom Menace, the voice was Peter Serafinowicz, whereas the voice aside from Phantom Menace, is all Sam Witwer. I think if they did live action, they would have to do Witwer's voice with Ray Parks, because the thing is, Ray Parks can actually do all the stuff that Maul can do because he does it.
Yeah.
You know, he can do the flip thing, because I went to Celebration years ago and we went to a Ray Parks panel and he showed on stage. He literally got a lightsaber and was doing the Maul moves, the kick and the flips and stuff, and you're like, incredible.
I think the thing as well,
and the body size and type, because Maul's not that tall either.
Sam Witwer's a bit more kind of stocky and his head's a bit, whereas Ray Parks has got that elongated head. He fits.
I think it's
more.
the opposite way around, really. Sam Witwer's almost like our general body types, kind of averagey height, not that muscular. He's like toned, but he's not. Whereas Ray Parks is stocky. Ray Parks is a bit more.
Maul is kind of. It's like he's stretched, but
in Rebels he is. In Clone Wars it varies a bit, but that's because obviously his legs. So he is taller with his cybernetic legs, to be fair.
He can adjust then.
Well, you see him in Solo, he is quite big. He's quite, but I don't know, you know, it's a few things, but I don't know. I definitely need Sam Witwer.
We're wishing.
Yeah. But is there any last things before we wrap this up?
Just, again, if we were to bring this to live action, I'm not saying that they should do a Duel of the Fates, but in my head, when I was going through these panels the second time, that was the soundtrack that I had in my head.
Oof, that's a powerful shout. Well, I'll say that with the if anyone wants to read any more Maul stuff, because there's not that much Maul content, so it's quite easy to read it all in the canon. There are a couple of Legends books are really good as well, but if anyone wants to hear more about Maul and you want to know more about his beginnings and like how Palpatine found him and what kind of trials Palpatine put him through before the Phantom Menace, there's a mini-series, which is a 2017 comic series just called Darth Maul. In fact, it's advertised in my version of Son of Dathomir. It's in the front. It's a picture of Maul. It's like a red cover and he's baring his teeth and holding a lightsaber. It's pretty good. It's not phenomenal. It's not as good as this, but it's quite cool seeing Maul's origins. There's quite a few cool, brutal fight scenes in it. It's either 4 or 5 issues. Quite easy. You can do it in one sitting, so I'd recommend that. There's an Age of Republic. So Age of series is one-shot comics in 3 different eras. Age of Resistance, Age of Republic, Age of Rebellion. And you got one story of each character, basically. Some are villains, some are heroes. One of the comics is Darth Maul, Age of Republic. And that essentially goes hand in hand with the Darth Maul 2017 comics. So it basically gives you a bit more of his origins, does some flashbacks, and shows him like he goes to the place in Star Wars Rebels where he gets reintroduced and he blinds Kanan and stuff, and Ahsoka fights Vader, Malachor. He goes there with Palpatine about 15 years or 15 years before Phantom Menace. And Palpatine makes him breathe in the ashes of a petrified Sith to have a Force vision, and it's crazy. So it's interesting, like stuff like that. I just love that, anything with Force visions and weird stuff. And then there's a Legends comic called Darth Maul Death Sentence, which I mentioned in the early days of Star Wars comics in canon. It's Legends, but it's basically just Darth Maul and Savage Opress right after they get reunited and when Maul's no longer crazy, and they basically just go off and murder loads of people, and that's all that comic is. I don't know why it's not canon, because it's literally. It's almost literally like one episode of the Clone Wars, but whatever. But there's some of my recommended readings and stuff. If you want to hear more about Maul, maybe we'll delve more into it in the future. Who knows?
Sorry, question. Did Maul ever meet Vader?
No.
Right.
At least not to our knowledge.
Because I just... That could have been quite either a badass team-up or a badass fight. Between them both.
I think after the Clone Wars... and Maul realises that Palpatine's taken over the galaxy, Maul just hides, essentially. Right. He obviously becomes a criminal overlord eventually, but Solo's about 10 years after the events of the Clone Wars, so it takes him a while. And again, no one knows what happened to Maul after Clone Wars, apart from where he's in Solo. It's literally Clone Wars, 10-year gap, Solo, 5-year gap, or 4-year gap. No, 5-6-year gap, actually, and then Rebels. So... who knows? But friends, so this will come out, I think, likely February sort of time. But we've got this. Then the next thing we're doing, I believe, is going to be the unfinished episodes. So we're not doing the unfinished Bad Batch episodes because they're just in season 7 of the Clone Wars. We're going to be doing the Crisis on Utapau. I've never seen them. Dave has jumped the gun. He's already watched them. So this is the only time where Dave has seen more Star Wars content than I have. That's canon. And so... We're going to be tackling that. And then I think I've roped the guys into doing the Dark Disciple book as well, just because I said you'll have seen every single piece of Canon Star Wars content except this one book that I've read. And so hook them in. So I imagine we'll be doing that, and that will probably be released either late February or March or something. And then we'll finally be able to delve into season 7. And that'll be 3 episodes because there's 3 arcs and it's pretty easy going. So that is what we've got for the future of this. And then we'll do a wrap-up episode. Then we'll do Revenge of the Sith, then Tales of stuff, and then we'll go from there. But what are we up to? So I'm doing a Skeleton Crew. That's probably already finished by the time this comes out. I've done lots of like Star Warsy content recently, but nothing that I haven't spoken about here anyway. So just follow me on social media at Genuine Chit-Chat, wherever you're listening, like, comment, subscribe, all that usual jazz, and share. Dave, although this you won't be able to tell us what's coming out immediately, just brief VHS stuff and what else you're doing.
So as we're recording, the episode we've got coming out this week is National Lampoon's Vacation, the original with Chevy Chase that came out. Will be old hat, no doubt, by the time this episode comes out. But yeah, on the Chris and Dave's reality TV cast, we've just started Traitors, season 3 in the UK. So I don't know if you guys have seen that at all, but
a lot of people talk about it. But
yeah, it's well worth a watch. It's something a bit different. Think like Cluedo in real life, where people are trying to figure out and
it's
people
like
get
poison
very
chalices and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some of that.
Palpatine into it, really.
Yeah, you basically have some people who are traitors, and then you have a lot of other people who are faithfuls, and they're all in this kind of big mansion, and they have to figure out who the traitors are, and the traitors can kill off different people who they think are a threat to them, or they can give some misdirection. Palpatine will be fucking great in that.
He created it.
Yeah, Yoda and Mace Windu would be shit.
What was that,
Do you remember playing a game called Werewolf? Where
I've played Werewolf, yeah, because there's loads of expansion packs. It's like Secret Hitler. That's another one where it's like you play. There's like a group of you playing, and 1 or 2 of you is trying to like kill everyone in the group. Yeah, you don't know who. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, very much like that. So it's worth a watch. It's if you give it a go for like. Well, actually, probably it takes a couple of episodes to get into it. But yeah.
Can you just jump into season 3, or do you need to see that?
Yeah. No, it's there's no continuity. It's all the same game. So a bunch of people coming in, and like I say, it's a game, but people get very into it. There's tears, there's arguments, there's emotions flying all over the place. So yeah, by the time this is released, that'll probably be over. Usually about 12 episodes for a season, but yeah, if you haven't watched it before, I can highly recommend it.
Very good. I'll make sure I put a note of that in the description. Maff, and also I've been on Spider Dan Pod quite a few times, and we've all of the episodes we've done with Back to the Filmography, our premiere of season 2 with Matthew McConaughey. I think all of our initial episodes are out of that. So again, check the description. Maff, anything else that you are up to in general?
I've got another Back to Filmography, but I think it'll be later on. I don't think that's coming up soon.
But that's how to keep our eyes on us, is Comics in Motion feed, VHS Strikes Back, CD Reality Cast.
Check the show notes, because they're always kind of in there.
Yeah, always check the show notes. I'll keep them up to date. Regardless when we record this, they're pretty up to date. But but amazing. Thank you both so much for reading the comic and humouring me. And yeah, Dave, I'll definitely send you recommendations and stuff in the future once we're done with the intensity of Clone Wars, and then when we're doing slightly lesser things, then we'll have a bit more breathing room. But if anyone listening wants any recommendations of comics, canon comics is my speciality. I've read them all, so just if there's any character or thing you want to see, let me know and I'll recommend you stuff. But there will be sprinklings of that throughout the future episodes of the Star Wars Conversations. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, follow me at Genuine Chit-Chat on all the social media places. I am everywhere. And make sure you subscribe, like, all that jazz. Support these guys, what they're doing. Support the friends of our feed, as we've already mentioned. Details are in the description. We'll talk to you next time with the unfinished Clone Wars episodes, the Crisis on Utapau, or Crystal Crisis, or whatever. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin go to Utapau. That's the general premise of what I understand. But, friends, thank you so much for tuning in, as always. And of course, may the Force be with you.
Always.